Hi, this is Commissioner Raquel Regalado, and welcome to our show about the amazing people that live in D7. And today we actually get to say hello to a dear friend, Saif Ishoof. How are you doing, Saif?
I'm doing well, Madam Commissioner. How are you doing?
Good, good. So now everybody knows you live in D7.
I'm in D7. I'm repping D7 with our commish, and I'm proud of D7 and grateful that we have leadership like you helping to drive and make sure great things happen.
Thank you. Well, this is a part of the show where we have to read off all of Saif's achievements.
Oh my God, make my mom and my kids proud. I wish my teenagers believed that everything you read is true.
No, this is all true. This is all true. So I actually met Saif years ago in Lab Miami, right? Like that was the first time.
Lab Miami, maybe just
maybe even before Lab Miami.
We shared a random colada somewhere, and just from there,
we had Wi-Fi in common.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Wi-Fi is a person.
Yes.
Wilfredo Fernandez. Now he's
the most
Twitter.
Miami name. That a guy's name is Wilfredo Fernandez,
and we call him Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, aka Wi-Fi.
Yes, Wi-Fi. Right. Yes. So Wi-Fi. I think we met through Wi-Fi many years ago. And back, this is we're talking 2009 and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Before the global financial meltdown, or right around then, when we were trying to figure it out.
Hey, should people be learning to code?
That's right.
Wouldn't that be a great idea?
That's exactly right. It's a throwback.
So we'll tell you more about how we got that started. But Saif founded Lab 22C. Your company serves as a thought partner for companies and founders looking to grow and scale their impact, right? And create a Miami ecosystem. When you first started talking about this idea of a Miami tech ecosystem, we were all like, ¿qué?
Yes,
So now it's like a thing. So we'll talk about that too. So in February 2022, you were named the inaugural President Innovation Fellow at Miami-Dade College. So now you're all representing Miami-Dade College. A shout out to my sister from another Mr. Madeline Pumariega.
President Pumariega. That's right.
She's amazing. So there you're going to be providing guidance to, what was initially created there, I guess, the tech lab, right? So now it's the next, how do you take that to the next level?
Correct. We call it MDC Tech. So that entire movement that Democracy's College is building for students and creators in this community, President Pumariega has pulled it under an umbrella effort that she calls MDC Tech, which we'll talk about.
So more than the Innovation Center. Right?
So much more.
So taking it to the next level, and we'll talk about that. And then of course you served as FIU's VP of Engagement.
That's right.
Also we're Panthers. Also,
that's right.
So I graduated from Miami-Dade and from FIU.
You're repping the full 305
the full
ecosystem.
305 ecosystem and St. Thomas. So there you go. Opelika in the house.
Opelika, baby.
So, and then you were appointed to serve as the City of Miami Senior Advisor for Technology and Innovation. And obviously that's part of Francis Suarez's initiative over there.
That's right.
And you're founding executive director of the AmeriCorps program.
City or Miami. That's where we were when you were.
That's right. That's when we met. City
when Madam Commissioner was an extraordinary school board member.
It was City
That's right. It was City Year. The Red Jackets.
The Red Jackets. Yes.
That's right.
We got to talk about
Give a year, change the world.
Yes, and Wi-Fi was in that, and that's how
he was at Teach for America. We don't talk about that. We love Teach for America because I have TFA friends and we need them. Extraordinary teachers, but we were all in the ed ecosystem back then. We realized that human potential, and most especially extraordinary young people in our schools, that's how we build democracy.
Right. And then we have to mention, for those of you that know me, you know that I absolutely adore George Plasencia. We've been friends for years. He's the reason that we are both poor drivers. I don't know if you know, but George and I took driver's ed together and typing in summer school at Coral Gables Senior High, and we learned Zippo.
That's like an entire that could be like a Netflix documentary series, seeing George Plasencia.
Adolescent George Plasencia and I walking around Coral Gables.
I want to see that throwback version of you all.
It's like young rock.
I would want to see that. I definitely want to see that. A lot of pastel.
Yes,
there was no Sunset Place. It was Bakery Center back then. That's old school. That's original 305.
And I can say that George Plasencia and I both wore blazers in high school. We were those kids.
See that.
You can see that, right?
I can see that.
We were the two kids that wore
flannel because I had to rep, a little bit of Kurt Cobain, but that's just
those
me.
were the days.
That's right? You chose a lane.
I did go to Lollapalooza in 1992. I was there, man.
I was there. That was rare. That by the way, that Lollapalooza.
It was the day before the hurricane.
That little thing called Hurricane Andrew almost threw that off. I mean, thank goodness.
Yes. We'll talk about, we'll talk about that.
We can keep going.
Talk about that. But shout out to George. Now you're working with George. You've been named Innovative Director at República Havas.
Yes, that's right.
Which is amazing.
I get to help advise the great team at República Havas and George and Luis Casamayor and the entire team out there. They're
wonderful. We were just celebrating their anniversary. It's
quince.
Amazing. They had a quinceañeras. They had a quinceañeras party at Adrian Arch's house. If you missed it, you can go on social media and check out all the
Miami
pictures.
Thing that an ad agency would have a quinceañera,
Yes.
I mean, I feel like
and they had the spinning thing. I didn't have time for that because I didn't, but they had everything.
If I brought my 15-year-old daughter, I feel like I'd have to get like a pink taffeta dress to bring her to the quinceañera, like old school style, but we didn't do that.
That was awesome. All right. So we met at City Year. You've been, in Miami for such a long time talking about tech. Now, I remember when Emerge first came out, and we were like, is this really like a thing? I did some work with Wi-Fi and Lab Miami back in the day to try to get the state of Florida to mandate coding. We started all these coding programs and really talking about the labor force, right? So now you're involved with the universities who are doing the bulk of this training, right? Yes. It's no longer like an idea. It's actually happening. Miami-Dade has an amazing computer science program, and so does FIU. So what can you tell us about what's happened over the last decade? And do we have the labor force to do what you've been talking about for 15 years?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I feel it's great sitting here in South Miami because actually 22 years ago, after I graduated from law school down the street at UM, I actually built a vendor management software company. And I actually headquartered it right in South Miami, across the street from Sunset Place or Bakery Center. And so back then, that was the year 2000. A lot of people, they think about the Miami Tech journey over the last decade. I like to think about it going back almost 20 plus years. And at that time, I was recruiting engineers out of University of Miami, out of FIU. It was a very, very different ecosystem. You then fast forward to the early teens, 2010, 2012.
We were talking about it more.
When Lab Miami had opened, and there was a lot of early momentum. Manny Medina had just sold Terramark to Verizon. And so now you had the real ecosystem, the ability to build companies. I think what's really happened over the last decade and what's excited me the most is that you've seen maturation in our academic ecosystem. So obviously K-12 because of leadership, folks like yourself and our prior Superintendent Carvalho, and then Miami-Dade College, recognizing at the end of the day, transformational innovation ecosystems, the number one driver is human potential. Right. And so we've seen a range of programs, both formal programs in high schools, community colleges, standing up paid internship programs, which you've been a big champion of. Because at the end of the day, the way I like to describe it is that what's happening globally in the innovation markets is that there's an ocean of liquidity and capital, but there's a desert of talent. And so what that means is that technology companies are in pursuit of those markets that are rich with talent. And what the pandemic showed is that there are talented engineers, not just in Silicon Valley, not just in New York, not just in Boston, but in great cities like Miami. And I think that that's really what has happened over the last 24 to 36 months. These founders and funders have seen what all of us have known for many years, that our programs out of our K-12 system, our community college, and our universities are producing world-class talent. And those companies are willing to invest in that talent. I think that's undergirding what we're seeing in this Miami Tech movement.
You mentioned two things that I think are so important. I think early in 2010, when we were talking about this, there were folks that were doing this work here that said, you know what, I got to leave Miami if I'm going to make this happen. Right. I'm going to have to go to Silicon Valley. And there were people who did that. We know people that
we all have
had great
left.
ideas and were like, hey, I would love to stay here, but I just can't do it. And when we were talking about the labor force back then, the example that we used was Pinnacle. For those of you that remember your Florida history, you'll remember when Jeb Bush brought Pinnacle and we spent all this economic development money and they just didn't have the labor force here.
That's right.
So we still haven't made it a requirement. I always said, we need to make coding a requirement in the same way that George and I learned to type. I think that our kids need to learn to code. It's the same exact conversation. We had some issues in Tallahassee because they wanted to swap it out for math. And we were like, no, they need math, right? Like, don't say math or, or coding. They need both. And it's still an elective. But even as an elective, it's become so popular. We have so many schools that are doing it. In after school program, I support one in Ponce de Leon Middle. We have all these robotic programs.
That's right.
A little Raspberry Pis. Everyone gets very excited about this stuff. And obviously Miami-Dade has participated in a lot of these fairs to really get middle school students excited about coding. We've talked about this on other occasions. Why is it important to start young?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, what we're witnessing at this very moment is the creation and the birth of the next chapter of the internet. And that's really what's called Web3. So a lot of people focus on cryptocurrencies and blockchain, but at the heart of it is really what's being built right now is the decentralized web. So we're moving from a world where technology lives only on servers, but now it lives on the distributed internet. And we have an opportunity as an ecosystem, regions like Miami, to really win the second half of the 21st century in the decentralized web. And so I think we have to start early. I'll even just share a personal story in my own family.
I was about to say, when was your first computer? I had a Tandy.
Yeah, I remember
Radio Shack.
I remember that. I loved Radio Shack. I love the magnets there.
Yes, I loved everything about Radio Shack.
There's an awesome Radio Shack out in Kendall that my dad used to take me to. Yeah,
my
that was
number
great.
one thing was to go to Radio Shack.
That's right. I hit McDonald's and Radio Shack, and I felt like, an
the
8-year-old.
I
felt like I was winning at that point.
Did you choose Radio Shack over Toys R Us? Because I did.
I really like Radio Shack and all the builder kits, but even sort of jumping forward in the journey as a parent, we're both, both of us have the joy of sharing, of having great young people in our lives. My own kids went about 7 years ago, and now they're 14 and 15 years old. They did a computer science boot camp in 2015, and they actually both won in 7 years ago a bunch of Dogecoin. And they stayed engaged in cryptocurrency over the last 7 years. And as a result of that, now I'm proud that both of my kids, especially even my 14-year-old, has become one of the best known teenagers in cryptocurrency in this part of the country, and actually has made it his life's mission, not just to accomplish and achieve on his own, but to actually go out and teach other young people about the future of the decentralized web. So he's formed long-term partnerships with organizations like 5,000 Role Models, Boy Scouts, where he goes and he educates other young people about the future of the decentralized web. And I think that because of leaders like you, Madam Commissioner, during your time as a school board member, during your time now as a county commissioner, we've created this type of ecosystem where it's young people like that I think are going to be determinative of our ability as Miami to really attract the types of companies. Because when they look into our South Florida and they see, if Amazon had to make a decision about a second HQ today, it would be in the 305.
Agree.
And because we have leadership that understands we don't want to chase away these companies. We understand that we want to keep taxes low. We want to keep public safety high. We want to be able to go to our corner store. We want to be safe. And businesses are voting with capital and talent and technology, and they're moving here as a result of it.
I think the change is also that now we have Miamians, native Miamians in these positions, right? Because there's a difference. I think that there was a different mindset from people that are not from here that kind of came here. I mean, and our kids are Miamians.
They're all 305.
They're all 305ers. They're not going anywhere. They don't want to go anywhere. Quite the opposite. They're all about staying here. And when you don't have a place to go to or to escape to or to visit, I think it's a different dynamic. I wanted to talk to you about, what's happened recently with cryptocurrencies, what's happening at the city of Miami. Francis has made so much noise about this. And the question is, are people coming? And we know that people are coming and working from here remotely. The pandemic has changed that,
yes.
So how are these businesses going to stay here? And how are we going to provide them with support so that, they stay long term? Or have we dramatically changed the way that labor works, and now this is a permanent thing?
We're in a completely new place, and I'm glad you raised Mayor Suarez, who I know has been a friend and colleague of yours for a long time. I mean, what has happened is, as we all know, there was this famous tweet that went around the world,
yes,
December 4th, 2020, and he responded to a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley who said, "Hey guys, what if we move Silicon Valley to Miami?" And Mayor Suarez responded with 4 simple words: "How can I help?" And on the other side of that tweet unearthed that there were thousands of remote workers, investors, founders, that is a function of the pandemic. And I'm not a politician, so there's no political sort of flavor that I ascribe to this. Conditions that existed in places like New York and California that made we're not states like ours, which were open, and at the same time we were still science informed.
The weather helps too.
The weather helped a lot. But these founders were realizing that, by the fall of 2020, they were looking around and they were saying, taxes are low, we've got great public safety, we've got great schools, and we've got an extraordinary talent. And so over the course of the last 16 months, data, I like to say that you can argue with your doctor, but you can't fight the blood work. And the blood work is this. We've seen almost 1.5 trillion with a T assets under management companies move into Miami. We are the number one city in America for tech job growth year over year, the number one city in America for tech job migration. We've become the default crypto capital of North America, almost a 400% increase in venture capital funding in market. VC dollars matter, and I want to translate this for everyday residents, my friends and neighbors and homies in D7, because a venture capital firm that invests and deploys money means that they're hiring people locally, and not just tech nerds, but it means that our friend who might have lost her job at Dry Clean USA, she's getting a job as an office assistant. Maybe somebody that's working. And they take
up resources, right? So they go to restaurants, they pay rent, they have a car.
The cafeteria downstairs is now getting somebody coming and buying croquetas. It's not just that VC dollars is hiring more out-of-town engineers. Quite the opposite. It means that the parking attendant that works in that building that was otherwise not fully occupied. So we've seen VC dollars grow, but then at the same time, we've seen our community become rated the healthiest city in America, the happiest city in America, and by the dozens. A lot of the people who are moving into our market are not just people who've never called South Florida home, but they're kids from the 305 that were engineers at Microsoft. They were at Facebook. They were at Netflix.
They had to leave, and now they're coming back.
And many of us have friends and family like that. I just had lunch with a dear friend who, she's an example of that. She's a 305 kid. She moved back here. She had a great job in the Valley. Now she's back here. She's an investor. She's doing powerful and important things back here in Miami. And so I think a lot of people worry. They're like, is it real? And I would say, having been at the front line of meeting many of these companies as they were DMing Mayor Suarez, and I had the opportunity to help support the mayor in creating Venture Miami, that in meeting them and helping them move their families and getting their kids settled and established here in South Florida, this movement is real. B, it's enduring, because now our institutions like Miami-Dade College, FIU, and UM, about a month ago during eMERGE, we held a Venture Miami hiring fair. We had 3,000 jobs opened. We had over 1,000 plus candidates show up, and scores of companies that were there trying to hire and invest in local talent. And, a lot of people wonder, will this tech movement change Miami? And, we use oftentimes the joke of like the tech bros.
Yes.
So the tech bros, will they change Miami?
They're a little ridiculous.
Here's what I'll say, Madam Commissioner. And maybe it's because I'm so bullish on Miami. They're not going to change Miami. Miami is going to change them. We're going to change the face of America's innovation ecosystems, because we've got more founders of color. We've got more founders of diverse backgrounds. We've got more female founders that are building great companies in this ecosystem. And I think in that regard, whereas the past looked like Stanford, the future is going to look a lot more like a single mom that goes to Miami-Dade College, learns a programming language, and has an opportunity to build a company on the blockchain.
And I think that's something that fits Miami, right? So when we talk about like, don't California my Miami, we get a little worried.
Of course.
But I agree with you. I think that we're seeing a change, and that the people that are coming are kind of adapting to our lifestyle, and they're being pretty well incorporated.
I like to say they're getting guarapo in their veins. They realize that, at the end of the day, that what drives Miami, the essence of it. Mayor Suarez talks about Miami becoming the capital of capital. And obviously that's financial capital and human capital and social capital. But really the glue that binds us in this community is cultural capital. The fact that we are not a melting pot, because melting pots assume that everything
becomes the same. We lose our identity.
But rather, we're a place where it is like a buffet where, we've got these beautiful communities from the Caribbean. We've got our deep Cuban American identity. We've got historic Black communities. And against that backdrop, we think about it, we are a community that's made of folks that survived the horrors of the Holocaust, the people who escaped the worst of Castro's Cuba, the ghost of Jim Crow. the doughboys who won World War II. And out of that backdrop, the worst of totalitarian regimes in the Americas, and against that backdrop are the people, the hustle, the grit that are building Miami every day. That's why we're winning. And I believe that when Silicon Valley folks move in here and they see that essence, they see that hustle, whether it's the Uber driver telling their story of escaping the worst of Maduro's Venezuela, and they come here and they're trying to create a better life for their family, they realize what we're doing here is very exceptional and unlike any other city in America.
Agree. And I think our diversity is very different. I mean, we were diverse before diversity was cool, and our understanding of it is very unique and multifaceted, which in other places, they're still like at a very early steps of that. When they talk about diversity and inclusion and equity, I think that we're a lot more ahead, decades ahead.
Way more ahead.
Because, and one of the things that I hope that this, tech wave will do is include adults with intellectual disabilities. And I've talked about that. And I think that's another tremendous opportunity, right? That the workforce can be more diverse, and that we can have different people of different abilities kind of doing this work. Well, Saif, we've run out of time, but thank you so much. Your kids are fascinating. I want to say that also your daughter is in the Miami-Dade County
I have to rep for my daughter, Rania. She is 15 years old, and she is a member of the Miami-Dade Youth Commission, repping D7,
yes,
appointed by Commissioner Regalado. I have to highlight something because this matters, and we both take pride in how our children do things. She went through the entire process, applied online, interviewed with the county staff, did the whole thing, and at no point in time said, "Hey, Pops, do you know the commissioner?" It was only at the very end of the process.
Yes, I saw her name. I was like, wait a second.
She then said, because at the end of the day, I think that, we all know we want to support the young people in our lives, yes, do the right thing and represent our values. And I think that you've been such a beacon for that in our community. My wife and I and our kids are grateful to live in D7. And we have the best neighbors, and we have the best community that we get to call home. That even if I'm in Wynwood, I get to drive home every night and be in D7 and go around the corner to a Pinecrest Bakery, which is on every corner, and get a pastelito. But thank you, Madam Commissioner.
It's the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love you, and you're doing amazing work.
Likewise.
And there you have it. Saif Ishoof here in D7.